This is Contractor Sense with Ruth King.
Welcome to Contractor Sense. Here you discover ideas, tactics, news, and information that matters to your contracting business and you. I'm your host, Ruth King. This episode is sponsored by Profitability Movement. Google Profitability-Movement to join this community of business owners focused on building profit, increasing wealth, and giving back. Thank you for joining us. Here is how we will help your business and you today. Your phone system can be a wealth of information. I know. You're used to having your software give you the information about who called in response to a specific marketing activity. But what if you could know how many calls weren't answered or how many times calls were less than a 10-second call? And yes, you are spying on your CSRs. You want to make sure that your customers get taken care of, your phone gets answered so you don't lose potential revenue. And yes, your phone system can do all of this for you. My guest, Stephen Price, CEO of PriceTelecom, tells you how. Stephen, welcome to Contractor Sense.
Hi, Ruth. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I mean, you've told me some really amazing stories about phones not getting answered and all the other fun stuff. Would you like to share one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'll share. This one's a fun one. We've got a customer where every time an emergency call comes in on their emergency line, the value of that call bumps by $1,000, right?
Okay.
And so we ran the reports for them just to find out how many calls were they missing that were emergency calls over a 1 month time frame, and they missed 78 phone calls over that one time frame. That was just missed calls to an emergency number, right? And so the potential there was 78,000 in lost revenue there. Right.
Probably more. And
Yeah.
you pissed off a customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had no idea. You know, they thought, oh, well, we've got it labeled as emergency. It rings all the phones. Of course, everyone's going to answer, right?
Yeah.
No, that's not how it works.
So you went back to the owner, right? And you gave him the data. And what did he do?
You know, they had to pick their jaw up off the floor first, you know, with that much. And that, well, and see, for us, we have to sit there and we have to say, you know, you just don't have enough people, right? I mean, for them, it was very simple. They didn't have enough CSRs, and the cost justification for the CSR was right there. You know, 78 grand potential, just the baseline of 78 grand a month on top of the other added services on top, you know, could easily afford one or two more CSRs just dedicated to answer that line. Truly. Yeah. You know, so that was their, you know, we had to kind of guide them through that. And of course they've taken that and said, okay, all right, we'll get it. We get it. Well, because, you know, sometimes you feel like you're beating the dead horse on hey, this data this is it. This is the accuracy of the data. Yeah. So, you know, some people don't want to believe it either. I mean, it's amazing what it really reveals about the CSRs, about the business, and about the business you're really missing out on and what you're losing. So
you don't know how many contractors or how many customers say nobody would answer the phone. You're the first one who answered the phone. I mean, how many people did they call before someone answered the phone? I mean, it's crazy.
It is. It's funny. We have customers tell us that, wow, you guys actually answer the phone. And we're going, well, yeah, I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. But it's interesting. I mean, you know, just to kind of set a baseline turn wise, right? Like when a client calls your main number, you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to measure that interaction? Right. And the call is either going to get answered, it's going to go to voicemail, or it's going to be abandoned, which means no one answered that call. Right. And so what's interesting is running through the metrics and running through to say, okay, well, how many answered calls did I have? How many calls were timed out and how many were abandoned? And what do those numbers look like? And what do they look like on the different times of day throughout the time of day and that sort of thing? And I'll tell you what's also interesting is having this information from your after hours answering services too. If you're not looking at the after hours answering services, and if they're not giving you these type of metrics either, you're really losing out. We actually had a doctor, a large practice, where when we were testing, we wanted to test their on-call their after hours answering service.
Mhm.
The hold time was 15 minutes for an emergency, after hours emergency.
15, 1-5.
1-5, and they had no idea. I mean, this is supposed to be a premier after hours service. I don't know about you, but if I'm a plumber or if I'm a customer,
I'm not waiting 15
I don't wait
minutes.
15 minutes. No, I'm going to the next person in the yellow pages to find out, why is my toilet flooding, or why is my air conditioner broken? I don't have 15 minutes to wait for my on call. But a lot of good.
Yeah, but nobody goes to Yellow Pages anymore. We'll go to the next person on the internet.
That's right.
Google.
What's the Google result? What's my next? But that's the funny part, is that you trust this service to be your after hours answering, but you don't, if you're not looking at the metrics or looking at the data of what's that average ring till or average time to answer. How long did it actually take them to answer those calls? And then what's the average talk time on that conversation? You're just not going to really understand what type of business you might be losing out on.
Yeah.
So
absolutely,
it's been interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah, and I'm going to give you even one more. One of my clients actually did a study with his phone system, and he found out by just doing very similar things to what you're doing is that the call volume dropped dramatically after 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So what he ended up doing was, number one, not going to the answering service until after 7. And somebody stayed until 7 to answer phone calls. And their technicians, he had some start later and some, go to work till like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And it dropped his, the amount of time that the on-call technician actually had to be out, number one.
Yeah.
And everybody was a happier camper.
Yeah. I mean, if you can, the nice part about looking at that data is, if you can spot and identify, I have an influx of calls every day at 2 p.m. Well, what does that mean? Don't send people to lunch at 2 p.m. Right? I mean, it's amazing to see. And, when you look in there and you start looking at the average hold time, or you're looking at, why do I have so many calls timing out and going to voicemail? And you start looking at that number ramp up, and it happens to be at 11 o'clock. And that's when the influx of calls come in. But that's also when people start going on break. Yeah. And you have to say, whoa, wait a minute. You guys need to adjust something here. You need to either have people coming in and stagger them as they go on break, but your time that you can capture those customers, it needs to be, here. And then the other piece is which I'll jump over to is the abandoned calls.
All right, let's do that one after break. How's that?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do it before we go to break? Tell them how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, they could visit our website, PriceTel.com, PriceTel.com. Our number and information is right there. We'd love them to reach out.
Thanks, Stephen. And thanks for listening to Contractor Sense. We'll be right back.
Many times, relatives are recruited to do your company's books without knowing how to do the books. Or you hire a bookkeeper who really doesn't know bookkeeping. If this is you, then your books are probably inaccurate. You probably pay more taxes than you should, and you rarely look at a P&L and balance sheet because you know they are wrong. What do? Have your bookkeeper enroll in Ruth King's Contractor Bookkeeping Basics. After completing this online course, your bookkeeper will know bookkeeping. You'll get accurate financial statements that help you make good business financial decisions. To enroll, click on the link in the show notes or call us at 770-729-0258. Enroll today.
Welcome back. Thanks for listening to Contractor Sense. I'm speaking with Stephen Price of PriceTel. And Stephen probably is one of, in terms of full disclosure, Stephen put in our telephone system and our computer internet system and is really, really good at what he does. So thank you for that, by the way.
Thank you.
And he works for a lot of my clients all over the country. It does not have to be here in Atlanta. So before the break, we started talking about abandonment. So first of all, explain what abandonment is.
Yeah, the abandoned calls are the calls that nobody ever talks about and most business owners forget. And it's that secret little revenue stream or rather revenue source that most people don't realize they should be hunting. An abandoned call is a call where a caller has dialed in, they've let it ring for a few seconds or for a few rings, and they don't wait for someone to answer and they don't leave a voicemail. That's an abandoned call. So those types of calls, those are a great little source and a hidden gem of potential customers that just didn't like how long they were waiting for you to answer. But it's still a great source where you can dial those callers back and say, "Hey, so sorry we missed your call. I see you didn't leave a voicemail. Sorry we didn't answer it in the time that you wanted to, but we're here now. How can we help?" And a lot of customers love that type of response. And in fact, now what you'll see is abandoned calls will actually even get a text message from some providers to say, "Hey, we're so sorry we missed your call. How can we help?" And then they'll start chatting with your CSR via text message. So
That's cool.
really, yeah. Some very a lot of that came out of from what I can tell, anyways, the dental industry, because they've got big money to throw at this kind of stuff. But now those features have really trickled down into the small and medium businesses where they can utilize them and just start having a text conversation right with the customer. So you can be texting the customer while they're talking to your competitor and seal the deal and steal it away from the competitor, even though you missed that phone call.
Yeah. That's cool.
Oh yeah.
All right. So I'm sure you have some horror financial stories about abandoned calls, right?
Yeah. I've got a great little story here. So we have a 19 location customer, and we came in, swapped their phone system out. They're having a horrible time, and we said, "Listen, let's run the metrics." And they said, "Okay, no problem." So we ran the metrics. The first day, as we're doing the install of the phone system, we're seeing both abandoned calls and missed calls at a staggering rate. Okay. The number of calls they were receiving per day were between 500 and 700 calls a day. Now, I don't know about you, but I would pay great money to be able to take on 500 or 700 phone calls a day. Their marketing, whatever they were doing, was fantastic. What was happening is their CSRs were answering 15 to 17 calls a day, not an hour, not in a window, but a day. And
So
their total,
they get 500 calls and they answer 17.
17. Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. And so their average talk time, or their total talk time, the agents, their CSRs, was about 25 minutes per day. And we, of course, we have just done this install. We think, oh, there may be a problem with technology. No, it was an absolute blunder from the CSR side. And so it was having those metrics, we were able to dive in and say, "Hey, you guys have great amount of calls, and we can disperse those calls to your 19 locations. It's not an issue. But your two CSRs, they're just not, we don't think they're doing what you think they're doing." Right. And the CSRs were basically just saying, "Oh, well, I'll just let it go to voicemail. Just let it go to voicemail." That is a very narrow way of thinking. If you think customers are going to want you to call them back, most people, when they're in the service industry, they want somebody answering live.
Yep.
Right. And so that's really where those metrics come in. Right?
Okay. Let me ask another question. All right. So you go to the business owners and say, the data shows that your CSRs are answering 17 calls and you're getting 500. Did he believe you?
Yeah. So I presented it with, "There's a possibility I'm wrong here, but I don't think I am." and I showed him, I said, "I'm going to call," and I called 3 times and they didn't answer my calls. And we could see they weren't on the phone because we could see real time what's going on. And of course he calls and they know his number, so they answer immediately.
Of course.
And so, I mean, he knew, and we ran the data. We let it run for another day or two while he was, because he was that C-level executive was sort of preparing his entry point on how he's going to correct it.
Yeah.
But the second day that this happened and they're missing calls, And we were able to look at the abandonment rate was huge, and the timeout rate was huge as well. We had tweaked the timing. See, when we had tweaked the timing so that they didn't have too much of an abandonment rate, but they were still going to voicemail. And the problem is, who knows how many customers you've ticked off by doing that. So, within about 3 to 5 days, he was already making changes. But, the problem is, candidly, the problem is that the CSRs got very comfortable because of the COVID restrictions that the company policies had put in place. And so they actually didn't have an on-site manager watching them. So we gave him the ability to watch them real time on answering and hanging up calls. And that changed the environment because now he's able to see when they're on and off a call real time.
Yeah.
So it's good way.
Yeah. It's Big Brother's watching you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when you're only answering 15 to 17 calls, Big Brother's got to do something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So okay. So you've talked several times about a telephone system. So is it all technology, or is there programming, or what's involved with doing that?
Yeah. It's all cloud-based, and it's all technology. So generally speaking, at this point, most people are still on AT&T phone lines and all that jazz. But nowadays, because it's in the cloud, as long as you have internet, you can answer phone calls, and you can make and receive phone calls from your company. So if that's internet with a cell phone, if that's internet with a laptop, or internet with a voice over IP phone hooked up in an office, you're rocking and rolling, making calls. And
cool.
And there's a third party too I want to talk about as well.
Quickly.
Yeah. So there is a company called Line, and they are using AI to instantly transcribe calls, and they can measure what your call to appointment conversion rate is. So now you're able to say, well, I took in 50 phone calls today, but I only scheduled 2 appointments off of them. What happened? So the realistically diving into this data, it's what your competitors are doing. It's down to the SMB side now. We should be doing it as well. All of the SMBs really who are service providers really, and contractors really should be driving into this data now. Absolutely.
Stephen, thank you so much for being with us. Give us the website again.
Yep.
Please.
Thank you, Ruth. PriceTel.com, PRICETEL.com.
Sounds great. And thanks to all of you for joining us. Choose one thing that you discovered and implement it in your business. These ideas, tactics, and strategies help you make more money, have more free time, and give back. If you like today's program, spread the word. Please review this podcast on any device you're listening to it on. Help a fellow contractor make more money too. For comments or questions, call me at 770-729-0258 or email ruthking@hvacchannel.tv. Thanks for listening. Have a great and profitable day.